welcome to the Swartz Entrepreneurial Leadership Series. My name is Oscar Kavanagh, and I'm a junior at Carnegie Mellon and Innovation Scholar at the Swartz Center. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our sit-down with Mr. Mark Cuban, world-renowned media proprietor and investor, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and strong-willed host of ABC's Shark Tank. Born and raised in none other than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, our Steeltown industrialist first attended college at the University of Pittsburgh, starting his junior year in high school, taking 10-mile bus rides at night to and from campus. Mark soon transferred to Indiana University because UPitt lacked a business school program. One now wishes that Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School would have been open at the time. But after graduating, Mr. Cuban briefly moved back to Pittsburgh to work at Mellon Bank before permanently relocating to Dallas, Texas, and starting his first internet venture, Micro Solutions, a computer consultancy service, which he eventually sold to CompuServe in 1990, making him an upstart millionaire at 32. Now, Mark is such a basketball fiend, he's been known to show up at the JCC between Forbes and Murray and Squirrel Hill. It was for similar reasons in 1995, amidst the growing internet bubble, that Mark and his friend Todd Wagner came up with Broadcast.com, a web-based audio streaming service for live sports, which was famously acquired by Yahoo.com in 1999 for $5.7 billion, a transaction preceding the advent of the internet crash that remains as Yahoo's largest acquisition and one of the top trades of all time. Today, Mr. Cuban continues his work on Shark Tank, season 12, by the way, premiering tonight at 8/7 Central, executive role at 2929 Entertainment, and management of the Mavericks team, overseeing their NBA title in 2011. Mark is a voracious investor in promising companies both inside the tank and out, to include a number of CMU startups such as Smash, Civic Science, and Deco Robotics. Finally, through the Mark Cuban Foundation, Mark gives back to communities that promoted his success. The foundation's AI Bootcamp, for instance, provides free introduction into the riveting world of artificial intelligence to low-income high school students. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, while we are together virtually, let's welcome Mr. Mark Cuban and our host, Rob Miller.
Hey, Mr. Cuban, how you doing? Nice to meet you virtually, and we're really excited to have you here. I think we're just going to try and conduct a little bit of a fireside chat here, and we've got some interesting questions coming in from around the Carnegie Mellon campus, from the various schools and groups. So, yeah, welcome. Really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited too, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think we can get things kicked off a little bit, thinking about Oscar's intro there. Oscar, thanks for the great job. But, given your kind of storied history and getting things started here in Pittsburgh, you've been entrepreneurial from a really young age. Do you think, when you think about entrepreneurship and the journey you've gone on, is entrepreneurship something you believe is inherent, or is that a skill you can kind of pick up along the way?
I think it's both. I mean, like anything else, some people are geared towards, or predisposed to being good at certain things, right? I mean, we're all just wired uniquely, and however we're wired. But at the same time, I think entrepreneurship is something that can be taught and can be learned, because it really just comes down to effort. Are you willing to put in the effort to learn about your business, your industry, the specifics related to it? Are you willing to put in the effort to learn how to sell, to market, about accounting, about finance, all the elements that go towards making a successful business? So yeah, I think it's both, and either can be successful, and neither really guarantees that you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. It's interesting you kind of bring up the point of effort and kind of earning those skills, but I think along the way, putting effort into failures is really important as well. So do you think that there are mistakes that are bound to happen, and as you were learning these skills along the way, do you have any mistakes that actually really stick out to you on your entrepreneurial journey?
So many. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day for me to go through them anymore. But, particularly when I was first getting started, I always tried to make my wins as big as possible, my mistakes as small and recoverable as possible, because you know that you're going to make them. But really, it just comes down to always learning. When I was first getting started, I mean, I didn't have a lot. I was starting with nothing, no money, no raise, it was just me sleeping on the floor effectively, going to a customer and having them front me the money to get started. And because of that, I was just on a mission, right? And when you're on a mission, you're focused, and it's, take no prisoners. I made more mistakes then, I think, because I wasn't as nice as I probably should have been. Particularly now, nice goes so much further than it used to, and pays off so many more dividends. And so, I think that, and understanding the role of culture and chemistry, I think that's something the Mavs have taught me, for better or worse, that if you don't have the right culture, if you don't really respect the people that work for you and recognize how they can contribute, you're not going to be nearly as effective or successful. And I think those last two were the primary mistakes I made.
Sure, absolutely. When thinking about culture, it's interesting. I think, especially in the MBA program, we talk a lot about building the right culture as you're, going on your journey in whatever company you're going in. And so, kind of given the portfolio of companies that you invest in and you work with and run and operate, is culture something that you try to make, consistent, the culture you put into companies consistent among all of them? Or is it something that you kind of look at differently between all of the different industries and companies you're working with?
Well, there's two different types of deals. There's the companies I start. And if it's something that I'm starting, then yeah, the type of culture that I see, the vision I see, the way, I want to help people succeed and match up my vision and their goals, that I'm going to do it one way. But if I'm an investor, then I just try to be supportive and give feedback to the entrepreneur or CEO, because it's got to be their culture. Because culture only works if every employee sees the vision of the CEO, and in some cases board, and really aligns their personal goals with the vision of that CEO. And so that, that's where culture has to come from. I can't introduce something because it won't be authentic. And if you try to create a culture that's not authentic and you're not honest, it's not going to work.
Sure. To hit on culture one more time, I think I'll just get the COVID-19 question in there out of the way. Are you finding it difficult at all to try and maintain that positive culture within the companies you are really operating in such a virtual world?
It's just different now, right? I mean, look, we're having this conversation about COVID, and everybody's afraid because nobody has answers and nobody knows who to trust. And so when everybody's facing uncertainty, and that uncertainty scales depending on each individual's personal circumstances. If you have kids, if you have family that's ill, if maybe you've lost your job and you're not certain what comes next, or you're on furlough, being able to communicate has to be authentic and honest and more listening than talking, because you have to admit, as a CEO, you're afraid as well. I'm afraid, right? I'm terrified. We don't know what comes next, and trying to spin it and hide that is not going to work. And now, so much more is virtual, if not virtually, everything. You have to communicate differently. You have to be a better listener. You have to be able to spend more time listening, because you don't get that dynamic of being around people, right? And I don't think necessarily that we're just going to go back to that as well. And so as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you're going to have to be more innovative in how you introduce culture and how you build relationships between your employees. So, the way I'm looking at it now, and obviously you have to be very agile because things are going to change. It can change by the minute. The way I'm looking at it now, I kind of expect more people to want to work from home, but also use the office as a gathering point so that they become special occasions. Some things that we can celebrate, things that we can bring people together with less stress. So it may well be that we work 4 days a week from home and 1 day a week, and that may not be the same day for everybody. There may be a different mix of who gets together and when, because you want to foster different relationships and just not the same relationships, just not relationships between people who already know each other. So trying to find different ways to do that. Or if you're moving out of an office space completely and won't have offices, going to a park, going to an event, when events come back, going to, a ballroom that you set up, going to a restaurant that you rent, so that people can get that personal time together and get that walk next to each other and talk to each other in office type thing. And so there's going to have to be a lot of creativity, but as a CEO, as a leader, you've got to figure out what works best for you and your company.
Yeah, that's really valuable information. I think everyone's trying to stay as fluid as possible right now, and and just understanding that, yeah, it's a time of trial and error. So really appreciate your insights on that. So pivoting a little bit here and kind of thinking about, the type of programs at CMU and some of the backgrounds that the college and the university is really well known for, specifically in tech or robotics. When you're looking at starting a company or investing in a company, right, and your portfolio is kind of mixed between, tech heavy companies, and you have a lot of companies in the entertainment business, right? Dallas Mavericks, esports, things of that nature. When you're looking to invest in tech versus service, what are the different things maybe you look for in those founders, a tech founder versus a service founder?
I mean, the first thing I look for is, does it make me say, why didn't I think of that?
Sure.
Nothing pisses me off more than I like, damn, what a good idea, right? So that's the first thing I look for. The second thing I look for is reality, right? Are they realistic? Because, at CMU, Yin's guys, have big pie in the sky, visions, and that's all good, but there's got to be some reality behind it. And particularly when you look at AI and robotics, and since they intersect, significantly, because everybody thinks they know somebody that knows AI great, is the AI expert, was a prof, or graduated from this AI program, but few people are able to do AI because it's hard. The more time that goes along, the more advanced processors become, the more available cloud computing is, the more AI that can take place, but also the more expensive it becomes, the more time consuming it becomes, and the harder to know if the output from AI is going to be as impactful as you hope it'll be. I can't tell you how many companies that I've looked at where they thought, okay, I can build this model. It's relatively linear, it's machine learning, right? And I can come up with an output, and it has no value whatsoever. And it took them 6 months to create the model and try to determine if the output is even legitimate, right? And so AI is hard. So trying to discern what is real and what is not real is the greatest challenge that I have in looking at AI. And I've got to tell you, I'm turning down more AI deals now because they under budget for the cost of AI.
Interesting.
Because what was it? There was just some NLP stuff, Mina, I think that Microsoft did, and it was, 1 billion plus variables, and it ran for I don't know how long, but the cost just to run the model was $1.4 million. Now that's a big, they're trying to be, shape shifting, right, in terms of NLP. But at the same time, even the smallest AI projects, you're going to go through your Amazon or Azure credits, your $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 credits in a heartbeat, right? So the biggest challenge that I have right now isn't leadership, isn't really even technology knowledge. It's really the intersection between AI and really being able to have a business that can function and be successful. Because particularly younger founders, every single one of them has underestimated the cost and time to implement AI in their businesses. And that's the challenge, the greatest challenge. And so looking for somebody that truly understands what doesn't work is as important as finding somebody that understands what does work.
Absolutely. Now, given those kind of circumstances, if you're able to, are there any companies right now that you're looking at that you think are doing what you're talking about particularly well?
It's still early. I mean, there's companies that have used AI. I've got these kids that are doing this company called Price Stack, and what it is real-time pricing. And so rather than just doing A/B pricing and seeing what the impact is, they're using machine learning to say, okay, we're just going to run through a lot of different variables, and we're going to see what the output is and see if we can optimize gross margin dollars, not even sales, but gross margin dollars. And so I think, they're freshmen now, I think, in college, but they've been doing AI for a few years. But now they're in the process of building into the API of BigCommerce and Shopify, and it's starting to work, right? One customer begets another customer, but what they did that was smart, they started small. And because they could truly work through the models and see if they had an impact, and I kind of guided them in that direction. Don't try to have 100 customers, don't try to have. The only really AI companies that are really succeeding like that are the pick and shovel companies. Their libraries, their resources, their data labeling, their whatever it may be. The companies that actually use AI, that are just getting started, it's taking a lot longer than they expect.
Absolutely. In your early on in your response there, one thing kind of stuck out to me, and considering the audience we have here today, you mentioned that the folks that are creating this company are freshmen right now in college. Would you have any real tips for maybe some of the younger folks, the entrepreneurial folks in our audience, freshmen, sophomores, anyone in really undergrad or early on in their MBA program, right? They're in their 20s, maybe even their late teens. They're just getting exposed to this world, but maybe they're very, very talented. They have that idea that you're looking for, but maybe they just don't have the experience to, wrap it up and put a bow on it. What kind of maybe,
Number one, this is the best time ever to start a business, because so much shit is falling apart, but that's creating so much opportunity, call it creative destruction. So many things are going online, and you're seeing physical retail just get decimated, services, entertainment, event-driven things get decimated. And if you have a better idea, this literally could be the opening to take advantage is the wrong term, but really put yourself in a position to succeed. So that's number one. Don't be afraid. Number two, know your shit, right? Yeah. Because too often people wing it. Look, you're at CMU, you're talented. We get it, right? But everybody's got the will to win, but it's only those with the will to prepare that do win. And so you've got to be the one that's willing to do the work. Three, there's going to be stuff you don't know, and that's okay. But don't look for mentors for shortcuts, right? Too often, well, I'll talk to my prof, and my prof has done this, or I've got this investor, they've done that. You're going to have to learn it at some point, or partner with somebody who does, or multiple people who do. And that's also a good thing. Find people who complement your skill set. You might be, the smartest person when it comes to GANs, or when it comes to creating whatever, right? But find somebody that knows business. Find somebody that knows how to sell. Be really self-aware, because the thing about entrepreneurs, we lie to ourselves over and over and over. We tell ourselves we know things we think we know but aren't sure, etc. So be really self-aware and find people who can complement your skill set. And being at CMU and in Pittsburgh, you're going to have access to those people. 4, it's not about raising money, particularly with tech, right? Raising money is not an accomplishment, it's an obligation. When you take that check from somebody, they want something in return. It's not like, hey, here's 250 grand. Call me when you need me. It doesn't work. Watch Shark Tank and you'll see it doesn't work like that at all. Shark Tank isn't 100% applicable, but close enough. And so do as much as you can. Sweat equity is the best equity. I'm only a billionaire because I was able to retain more than a third of the company when we sold it to Yahoo. That's what allowed me to get this return. I know a lot of people have created great companies, but because they took in money early and had to give away, because by definition, the greater the uncertainty, the more you have to give away, right? And so the earlier you raise money, the more you're going to have to give away. I know people have sold their companies for billions, or even public companies now for billions. And it's not that they were poor when they walked away, but it was 7 and 8 digits and not 9 and 10 digits like it could have, should have been if they would have just waited a little bit longer.
Sure. Yeah, it's that idea of making your pennies sweat, right?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, look, you've got access to all the computing power in the world, all the brain power in the world. If you've got a PC, if you've got broadband, and you've got access to the cloud, then you just need intellectual capital. Right. Why are you taking cash? What is it you need to buy? Now, obviously, as you heard me say, cloud computing can be very expensive, and that's where you lie and you say it's a student project, and you keep on using CMU's cloud computing.
Of course, leverage your resources.
Yep.
So pivoting off of tech a little bit here, maybe lighthearted, but we do appreciate the 412 shirt, absolutely. So thinking about sports affiliations, we're big sports fans up here in Pittsburgh. We love our, Steelers, Pirates, Penguins. So back in the day when you were looking at the Mavs, what maybe, and of course, you were in Texas at the time and everything, but what drew you to the Dallas Mavs maybe versus buying into a Pittsburgh sports team?
Well, first, before I looked at the Mavs, I looked at the Penguins.
Okay.
Because the Penguins, that's when Mario Lemieux, they were first had them, and they were really close to bankruptcy. And I like hockey. I'm not a super hockey guy, right? I never played hockey. and so I just wanted to help them stay in Pittsburgh. But then some guy, Ron Burkle, came along and took care of it. So that was a short fling. But in terms of the Mavs, I lived in Dallas, continue to live in Dallas, and I was a season ticket holder, you know, and so I would go to all the games, even when they sucked, because I've been a huge basketball junkie my entire life. You know, like you talked about going down and playing at the JCC and hanging out with my friend Todd, who's on the call, and Jerry's probably on the call, because I love the game. And so when I went to the opening night, and they'd been bad for a long time, and there was no energy. I just sold broadcast. It was like, I can do a better job than this. And that was like, ding, 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 ding. You know, put your money where your mouth is. And that's what led me to buying the Mavs. And then after that, before I had kids, I looked at the Pirates. They don't want to sell. They were making too much money. I looked at other baseball teams, but fortunately I didn't buy one, because now with kids, it's just too much time for 162 games.
Sure. So, you know, thinking about buying into the Dallas Mavs, or really any company in general, I've heard this from entrepreneurs in the past, and, you know, how to leverage really the people around you who are experts in that field. So when you went into kind of the entertainment industry in a way with the NBA, did you kind of go in with a lot of background knowledge, or were there specific people that were really able to kind of help you along that journey?
No, I had nothing. I was a complete idiot. And so I didn't walk in and get rid of everybody. People, you know, realized this team had been bad. It got voted the worst professional sports franchise of the 90s. And that was the biggest accolade over the previous 10 years. And people were like, why don't you just fire everybody? You know, they're so bad. I'm like, am I even going to know how to hire anybody? What am I going to look for? And so I went in and said, you know, and talked to the people there and said, look, the train's speeding up. We're going to do things, you know, on digital time as opposed to analog time. And if you're good with that, come on, let's go. And if you're not, we'll separate as friends. And a few people left, you know, they didn't like the you know, the ready, fire, aim approach. And on the basketball side, you know, we had Don Nelson as our coach and GM, and Nelly, you know, was a basketball lifer, smart. And, you know, I didn't know if we'd be a good team or a bad team, but I knew I'd learn a lot. And so I was just patient, and I tried to use the resources, like you said, that are there available to me. And, you know, they went well, you know, until they didn't.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
You learn. And then once I got to the point where I was more confident, then it worked. But I'll tell you, you know, a quick story. One of the things I did that just kind of, you know, made everybody roll their eyes, other than just yelling and getting fined by the league. I dove in and played general manager. You know, early on, I told Nelly, I'm like, look, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to be calling other general managers, because that's the only way I'm going to learn. And he's like, owners don't do that. I'm like, I don't give a shit. This is how I'm going to learn, right? And so I literally was calling owners here and there, and you know, I would do, like, we did a sign and trade for a guy named Howard Isley, I think in like 2001 or 2002. And it was the biggest trade in NBA history at the time. And I was so proud, because I put this trade together, and Howard was a great guy. But yeah, so you just have to dig in and learn, and whatever resources are available to you, you know, learn them. You know, can't you learn? Just ask yourself that. What is it that you can't learn when you get into a business? Now, there may be time constraints, but I'm guessing that, you know, if you're getting into something like I did, you know, that you probably like to learn. That's why you're at CMU. So get in there and learn that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love to hear that. It's exciting. I think kind of inspirational for everyone who's getting into that entrepreneurial world, or any industry really, right? What can't you learn? So kind of looping back, I think, you know, I think everyone would really be excited to kind of pick your brain a little on the current situation with COVID and the pandemic. I think for a while we were, you know, when is it going to end? And now everyone's getting used to it a little bit. And it's just so unpredictable that now I think businesses are really going to starting to be formed around this concept that things like this may continue to happen, even if, you know, things get better with COVID. What's going to happen next? So with that, you know, in your kind of rich portfolio, are there any industries that you're looking at that really might be disruptive here in the next 5 to 6 years, and where you're going to be focusing most of your time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously entertainment's going to change, and it's not so much about COVID, but partially, you know, what's going to be the impact of AR? You know, what's going to be the impact of, you know, better GPUs and faster GPUs and cheaper memory, And are we going to become virtual? And what's happening in the virtual space? What's happening with pose estimation and how I'm going to be able to, look at things differently and analyze from computer vision. So all these things that are really geeky are really
Sure.
going to have a better chance of being implemented because of COVID. And so do I think we're going to get back to having people in stadiums? Yes. I mean, you're starting to see that with the Steelers. And do I think there'll be a vaccine? Yes. Do I think people will take it? Yes. I mean, look, you guys didn't, it wasn't 2 years ago that we were still talking about the 1918 pandemic,
Yeah.
right? So if they were able to get past it, we'll be able to get past it. It's just a question of when and how. But to your question of opportunities, I think, and we alluded to this earlier, we'll do a lot more virtually. We'll do a lot more digitally. We want things a lot faster. We'll do things that use ambient voice. We'll do things that we'll use, maybe facial recognition, depending on how we deal with privacy. But there'll be so many different ways of interacting with commerce. And those are the things I'm looking for. And there'll be different ways, for people to present themselves. And that's something I'm looking at. So every Gen Z kid today is a brand, right? What you wear, Swartz, right?
Yep.
What you have on your social media. I don't know what the percentage of people who are on social media at some level for Gen Z, but it's pretty damn high, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you put on your social media is your brand. It's how you see yourself. And how you want to portray yourself is going to be more and more virtualized as we go forward. And so, not everybody's going to be able to afford a new, when the new drop for the new, Jordans comes out, you're not all going to be able to afford it. But if I could sell you a virtual pair of Jordans, so in your Instagram picture, sure, it looks like you bought a pair,
Right.
and I made those limited drops and, and serialized them with or without blockchain, and made it so you could trade them. Okay.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're looking at a digital version of commerce that didn't exist 2 years ago, and so I see more and more of that happening, going to brands. So Supreme, is Supreme still cool? I don't even know. So
It's in there.
yeah, it's fallen off a little bit, I know, right? And so, yeah, so the next drop from Supreme, for something that's where the designers made it 100% virtual and it's not real. But when the hard part isn't that or that concept, the hard part is making all the AR work perfectly.
Sure.
So that when somebody puts on a shirt like this and it's 412, it looks like a shirt and nobody has the slightest inkling. And that's actually harder to do than deep fakes,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't need to have, because deep fakes are easier. Just, I don't need to go into that. You guys probably understand it better than I do, but putting on virtual clothing is harder because you don't know what you're going to get in front of going forward. And so, those types of marketplaces are something I'm looking at closely, and I think are going to be something that happens that happens faster, let's say, because of the pandemic.
Sure. That's really, really insightful. And I think probably a space that people are looking at, but should definitely be paying attention to. Throughout that kind of breakdown, you brought up brands a few times. And I do think that's kind of an interesting concept, right? That everyone in Gen Z is their own brand, and it's kind of undeniable, whether they're, on Instagram, TikTok, they're a Twitch streamer. Like it's easier than ever to go create your brand, to create your merch, monetize all of these different avenues. But I think one thing that might be difficult, and a lot of young people are going to face a challenge, is how do you make that brand last, though? What kind of, impact can you continue to have?
So two different things. Having an impact is different. So having a social conscience and being geared towards having a social impact, right, are different than who you are as a brand, because your brand will evolve. No one wants to be the same person at 25 as they are at 18, right, or 14, right, when they got on social media, and the same person at 45, right?
Right.
And so your brand and what's important to you will evolve. But how who you want to be as you grow up is something that you'll figure out day by day by day. But what's different about Gen Z and younger millennials is you only want to associate with brands that share your social consciousness.
Sure.
Right? Because your brand is also the impact you have on the world, not just how you see yourself, but how you want other people to see it. When you go out, just to get into CMU, you had to, do all kinds of work, all kinds of community work and charitable work, etc. and you want people to see that because, and as consumers, you want to do business with companies that reflect those same goals that you have in trying to impact the world. And so, I think your brand will end up being defined not just by what you wear, but the companies you rep in a lot of respects, and the things that you do. Are you, that picture of you working at the Pittsburgh Food Bank is going to go a whole lot further in defining your brand than the picture of you wearing Supreme. And so I think
Absolutely.
that's kind of going to be the evolution of each individual's brand, more by what they do than what they wear.
Great. It's great. So pivoting a little bit, early on in the conversation, you mentioned how, with startups and with entrepreneurship, it's going, sleeping on the floors of places and trying to figure that out. I think it's interesting though, because you have a lot of entrepreneurs that are young and can probably pull that off. But then you think about the entrepreneurs who are maybe in their mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s, and they've got families. At this point, when you go on to new ventures, how do you balance that when you look at the time commitment of family, of work, of, free time?
It's hard, right? Like I waited, I didn't balance anything. It was like, to my girlfriends, it's me or your business. They were like, it's me or your business. And I was like, what's your name? I had no balance whatsoever.
Right.
But that's me. Everybody's got to make their own choices for themselves. It's not like only one way works. Because if you're not confident, if you're stressed because of home life, if you're stressed, if it creates mental health issues for you, it's not going to be the right way. You've got to just be brutally honest and recognize that, you're competing with other people who may be able to allocate more time. And, if you're honest with yourself about that and get someone to complement that and really help you where, fill in those spots where you may not be able to because of family or other time constraints, you just got to deal with it. It certainly makes it harder, isn't the right word, but it makes it more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thinking of complexity, I think a lot of students right now, they're looking for internships and jobs in this virtual world. We've heard some interesting stories though about how you've had the opportunity to invest in companies, really believe in companies, and you haven't actually met the founders in person before. It's been through email or Skype calls or something. So, we've got a lot of people here, and they're going to be applying to, jobs around the country, and they're never going to go have these in-person interviews. What are you looking for in a virtual world when you're just emailing with founders or someone kind of catches your interest? Anything specific they can do different?
Yeah, the exact same things I said before, because I'm going to pepper you with questions, whether it's email, like if you've heard of Box.com, Aaron Levy, that was a question.
Okay, sure.
Business. Yeah, we started his business via email, and a bunch of others as well. And so I'm going to just pepper you with questions about your business. I'm going to go Shark Tank on you, right? And by the way, tonight on ABC, 8 p.m., 7 p.m., because you always got to be selling too. And so I'm going to, just like I do on Shark Tank, on TV, it might be 10 minutes for a pitch. In real life, those things go 90 to sometimes even longer, 90 minutes or longer. And we're just banging away at somebody. And that's how I do it, right? I'm just going to bang away at questions that really questions your legitimacy. You're going to have to prove to me that what you're telling me about yourself is real. And just like I'm expecting you to do work about the opportunity and the company that I'm hiring and interviewing you for, I'm going to do work about you. I'm looking at your CV and I'm seeing everything. And if you're telling me you're capable of doing A, B, or C, I'm going to question it and you're going to have to earn it, you know? And so going in, you're just going to have to be prepared. This is like going into an interview is like starting your own company, right? And this is the product. You are Mark Cuban Inc. and your product is, the job that you're trying to get. And so you've got to be prepared going in. Now, all that said, don't look for the perfect job, because you just went from paying a shitload of money to CMU to now you're going to get paid to learn, whether it's an internship or a real job. And I'm just going to tell you, you can learn from every job.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned more from the jobs I've gotten fired from than the jobs that I liked, simply because I learned what not to do. And it's helped me more in my entrepreneurial career than any of the other things. And so it doesn't matter if you're working at McDonald's as a fry cook, You get to watch to see the processes that McDonald's put into place to understand how they perceive efficiency in a fast food environment. Literally, it's a masterclass in what to do in running a fast QSR restaurant, no matter what you do. So if you're working on models, for AI models, whatever it may be, you may just be the classifier there doing that mind-numbing, boring work of classifying data, right, to make their models work. Whatever it is, just be in a position to learn because you're finally getting paid to learn. And then the next job, you try to layer on a little bit more, because what's changed over the years is when you go to that first job, where, when, however, for however much you're getting paid, you're not looking for a career.
Yeah.
You're a free agent, right? You didn't even get drafted. You just got picked off the waiver wire, right? And after your first season, you're going to look to see if there's another team that's willing to pay you more so you can take your talents to ABC company.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. And so don't look at, look, if you want a career and you want to be there for 30 years, that's up to you. But, I think it's more likely that you're going to get paid to learn. This is your chance to increase your skill set. This is your chance to get that first taste of corporate life or whatever life, and then leverage that up so you can go to your next job and be more prepared.
Yeah, I think at least, for the majority of the generations that are sitting here, Gen Z and millennials, and that is a little bit of the case, right? You don't see so much of the 30-year career at one company anymore. And I think you did hit, yeah.
That's the way I looked at it from day one. Look, when I graduated, the last time unemployment was in double digits like this was when I graduated from college.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I had to take a job bartending at night and selling software during the day. And it was okay, right? Because I learned a lot. And
yeah,
I just looked at myself as a free agent. I'm gonna keep on stay at this job until they don't want me or I don't want it, and then I'll go to the next job and then start the next company or whatever. And that's just the way you have to look at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, you did repeat the word learn in there a lot. And I think you mentioned earlier, always be selling, but I think it's key, like you're saying, always be learning, always be listening as well. That's really key attributes to this.
Yeah, the number one skill set that I learned in college was learning how to learn.
Yeah.
Because the only constant has changed. Just think about it in your own lives. You all were born pre-iPhone, pre-mobile networking, pre-visibility of AI, even though it existed before. And that rate of change is not going to slow down.
Sure.
It's only going to accelerate. And if you're not willing to learn, you're going to fall behind. I'm sure there's people you trudge by at CMU that are sitting in front of terminals still, writing COBOL.
Yep.
that wish they weren't,
Mm-hmm. It's true. So I think we've got probably enough time for maybe two more questions here. But you mentioned Shark Tank earlier. I think we got a good question in here that was, it's kind of undeniable that Shark Tank, I think, has piqued the nation's interest in like that entrepreneurial spirit in a way that things hadn't before. I think people are more excited about startups and entrepreneurship than ever before. But, when you looked at joining that team and joining that, that industry there at Shark Tank, is there something that you see when you invest in companies on Shark Tank that's different than when you're doing, VC activities outside of that?
Oh yeah, totally. Night and day. Night and day. They're not the same at all.
Right.
Because, the reason I do the show isn't as much to make money, even though making money on a deal is great, but it's more to set an example for all of America that the American dream is alive and well. That if this person from the middle of nowhere in Iowa can have an idea, and while they're working as a mechanic during the day, at night they're working on this company, then they show up on Shark Tank, and the next thing you know, they're selling millions of dollars worth of product and making millions of dollars. That's a great example. And to me, that's the whole reason I do Shark Tank, because shooting the show isn't hard. Shooting the show is fun. But when you have, I've invested over 150 Shark Tank companies and trying to, and we've sold some haven't worked out, but yada, yada. But, it's a pain in the ass. And so I do it because it really sends that message, to your point, that entrepreneurship is a great destination for people. And if the folks that come on the carpet in Shark Tank can get the job done, then certainly anybody out there who's watching can get the job done.
Well, I think it's interesting too, and I say this to your credit, and I think what that show has been able to do. But I think it's excited, the nation in terms of going, like you're saying, getting the job done, starting their company. But I think for people in my generation and younger, it is starting to feel a little bit less risky in a good way to get involved with a startup, even if you're not the founder, but go join a company when there's only 6 or 7 employees and help them grind and grow, to be what they, these great companies they will become. It's really de-risked the situation in some way.
Yeah, but no question, right? Because, like we mentioned earlier, it's not as expensive to start a new company as it used to be 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago. And the best companies that you all, connect with are relatively new.
Sure.
You don't, it's not Ford, General Motors, it's Tesla. It's not IBM and whatever. It's, or Microsoft even though Microsoft has come back, it's, TikTok or Google or Instagram, part of Facebook, right? So these are companies that are relatively young, started by relatively young kids. Why not? Why wouldn't you go for it? And so you're right. It really has been de-risked in a big way. And if you get it wrong, you get a job.
Right. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for how a lot of us are thinking, and we're very appreciative of you helping kind of motivate us to get there. But so one more question here, and before we wrap things up. So I listened to a podcast recently, Freakonomics. You were featured on it, and there was an interesting question I think he gave you in there, which was that buy, sell, keep option between the NFL, esports, and the MMA. I think your original answer was that you would sell the NFL, you'd keep MMA, and you'd buy esports.
Right.
That was now a few months ago. I think that was pre-pandemic, actually.
No, that was years ago, actually.
It was years ago. Okay, so it came up in my feed as like a featured one that I needed to listen to. Well, then that's even better that was your thought years ago, getting a little insightful there back then. Has that changed post-COVID now a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even so much post-COVID. It's just everything that's changed. And really, it's been more to the negative of esports than anything else. So 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when we were talking about esports here in the United States, it was still relatively young and relatively new, and League of Legends was probably the big player in terms of esports. And, there were other players, Dota and other things that were going on, but esports really, even with all the pub it's got, hasn't really grown in the US much at all. Globally, it's been fantastic. And in Asia, it's been enormous. But when you look at like OWL, people don't get super excited about Overwatch League, right?
Right.
They pay attention to it and they watch it. They watch CSGO, but they're still going to bounce along. They're still going to bounce around to what's new. And part of the challenge with esports that I didn't give enough credence to is the power of publishers. Like basketball, MMA, football, the sport is the sport. Maybe the rules change a little bit, but publishers mess with meta. They come out with new games all the time. So is it Valorant, now Among Us, versus Fortnite, and is Among Us can't turn into an esport? Fortnite hasn't really become, it's tournament driven, but it's not really an esport. What's going to happen with OWL because they ask for so much money. So owning a team in an esport, which is kind of the foundation, they really try to make it look like traditional sports. And that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake, because it's nothing like a traditional sport. Now, that's not to say it's not a sport, but business-wise, it's apples and oranges. Sure. And the power, you've really got to do something that takes away the power of the publisher. Because one of the reasons I didn't invest in an esports team, I played, and I'm awful, but I played in the League of Legends tournament 4 years ago, maybe.
Tough game.
Oh my God, like it's 20-layer chess. And anyways, so they put me with all these guys who are Snoopy and these guys who are really good. And I was playing against the CEO of Intel at the time, and he beat me. Wow. But in any event, but I was talking to this one guy who was one of the teammates, and he's like, "Yeah, I just retired." I'm like, "How old are you?" He's like, "I'm 20." Yeah. I'm like, "Why did you retire at 20?" And he's like, "I'm burned out, dude. Right? You got to practice 8 hours a day on this thing, and we're all in the same house, and it's nasty." Now things have gotten a little better, but just the idea that the publisher can change the meta, and these kids have got to work, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And what was it? It was a Korean team that won. No, it's League of Legends still, right? no one from the US has even made it to
Right.
the championships, right?
Right.
And these kids are killing themselves. And, you know, the brands are strong in certain areas in the US, but mostly they're strong globally and not as strong here. You don't see kids walking around. Do you see kids walking around with FaZe Clan t-shirts at CMU?
Yeah, not too often, no.
Right. And so what does that tell you? And
Right.
so esports had a great opportunity, but the complexity and the dependency on publishers has really made it a problem.
Interesting. It's a great point. And I think that's an interesting insight also to think about, you know, moving forward and just the future of entertainment, right? And how is this thing going to adjust? And it maybe just because, you know, it's nice right now because everyone's home, but, you know, what the NFL, like you said, the NBA, the NHL, what they've been able to accomplish, moving that power away is really probably why the leagues are continuing to succeed.
Yeah, look, there's a difference between playing a game because you like the game. You're still going to play 2K. Right? You're still going to play Fortnite if that's your jam. Look, I happen to like Fall Guys. I'm just not big on gaming, right? And so I like Fall Guys because it's as easy as they come, and it kind of had its moment for 10 minutes and it's gone. But if you're into 2K, if you're into Madden, whatever it is, you're still going to play. That's different than esports.
Right.
And the good thing for the NBA in particular, if you're playing 2K much at all, you know all the players on all the teams, right? And so that helps us. And our challenge is how do we get Gen Z to watch games, right? Because you don't have cable, you don't have satellite, you've got, you know, maybe you have some sort of streaming, you know, YouTube Live or Hulu Live rather, and you get sports, but you're more geared towards watching things like TikTok, right? And I think, and the reason I bring this up, for now anyways, and for the next couple years, TikTok has done the best of using computer vision and content recognition to deliver content to a user than anybody else. And it's not even close. You can have 10 followers on TikTok, but if those 10 followers watch your video 30 times over and over and over again, then they're going to show it to somebody else. And if that person watches this 30 times, they'll show it to somebody else. And the next thing you know, somebody with 10 followers can have 20 million views on a video that they did. And that doesn't happen on any other media platform. We've got the NBA in particular and sports content providers. And actually a call I have this afternoon, how do we learn from that? How can we say, okay, Rob likes sports because we know that, but I don't need to feed Rob the whole Pirates game, or I don't need to feed him the whole Mavericks game, right? I'm going to give him one possession. If he likes that one possession from tonight's game that just happened 2 seconds ago, I'll give him another possession. And if he gets bored, then I'll show him an interview with whatever. Because when you look at it, and this is kind of getting into the weeds, but when you look at what's most popular on television, it's inverse to the actual amount of gameplay. And so, you know, hockey, baseball doesn't have a clock, right? So we'll set that aside. But hockey is the longest game and it's got the lowest rating. So soccer is the longest game at 90. It's got the lowest TV ratings. Then hockey's got a little bit higher, but still low. Then you go to basketball, which is higher, but still low. Then you go to football. Football only plays for 12 minutes.
Right.
The whole Steelers game is 12 minutes of action. And that's the easiest sport to watch. And so what can we learn from that? And, you know, the project I'm looking at, how can we, you know, recreate computer vision that looks at sports and understands what Rob wants? So we give you how you want, where you want, when you want it, and the bites that you want so that you'll stay connected to that basketball game, maybe not 48 straight minutes, but off and on enough to know what's going on and be excited about the game.
Yeah, enough to think about it and make sure that you're brought back the next time you're talking about it when you're not watching the game. It is interesting to think about how tech is being leveraged in so many different ways, you know, coming out of social media now, and something that is immensely popular among, you know, 15-year-olds, and now is going to be immediately applied to major sports and entertainment.
And it's not easy to do. You give them credit, right? That's like when they tried to force them to sell, and who knows what happens there. They weren't talking, you know, $10 million. They were talking $30 billion. Right. And it's not even because of the user base size. It's because of those algorithms. You know, what kind, you know, how they know what you watch. And like, if you start watching basketball clips, they're going to feed you basketball clips. Doesn't matter who you follow. You know, if you start watching, you know, Charlie D'Amelio is big. because her videos get watched. Somebody will watch the same video 30 times to learn her dance moves. Right.
Right.
Now, I got Renegade better than anybody. Right? So you got to watch me and my daughter on TikTok, but, and I'm a savage, of course. But you get on there and you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, we appreciate you kind of showing some of the dance moves here. That definitely caps things off the right way. I think people at CMU could learn a thing or two from you on those moves there. But hey, anyway, we really appreciate you stopping by. This was a phenomenal conversation we were able to have. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me here. I know everyone has had some real anticipation for this chat for the last couple of weeks now. So thanks for taking time. We'll all tune in tonight at Shark Tank as well.
Tune in tonight at 8 p.m. on Shark Tank. I'll tell you what, I rip into some dude, man. Some dude came on just trying to think he's got game. And it was just, you'll learn, right? Because it goes to a lot of what we just said today. You've got to be honest and authentic. And this guy was lying his ass off, and I just tore him a new one. So it's a fun night.
Hey, we'll be ready for it. We'll be ready for it.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for having us.
Take care.
Have a good one.
You too.